Schools remain closed. The total economic fallout from lost services could reach $700 billion. Let's bring in Barron's reporter Lisa Belfast with more details on these steep costs. Lisa, it's good to have you here. Tell us what parts of the economy you're talking about in particular.
Thanks very much for having me. So to come up with a $700 billion number, we're looking at a few things. One, most immediately, is the hit to retail sales. For the retail industry, the back-to-school season is second to only the holiday season and makes up about 15% of annual sales. Retailers this year are bracing for a decline of about 20%, as most parents say they don't need to buy the normal apparel and supplies and other things that normally go with a new school season. That's pretty small compared to what's happening at the school budget level. Schools across the country are looking at budget declines of about 25%.
Wow.
And that is going to affect companies like those that provide lunches and janitorial services.
Mm-hmm.
And then
let's talk about, sure, before we go into that, let's talk about some of the companies you mentioned so far. So retail sales, first of all, you know, we all know a name like Target is doing fine no matter if people are showing up for back to school or not. But a name like Newell Rubber Brand, or now Newell Brands, which makes the pens and markers, they're talking about the reluctance of the back-to-school shopper. On the school budget front, you're talking about Aramark and Waste Management. Explain why those stocks could suffer as a result of this.
Sure. For a company like Target, as you said, you know, people are still going to be shopping there. Their CFO did recently tell investors, you know, the back-to-school season is soft. But for a company like Newell, they have a large part of the revenue tied to schools. It's in their writing business. So as schools and students don't need to buy as many pens and markers, they are bracing for a hit. Then we have companies like Aramark. That's a company that has a lot of contracts with some of the bigger school districts, like the Chicago Public Schools, for example. They provide the school lunches. Some of that stuff just isn't going to be needed if a lot of school systems aren't opening.
Yeah, and let's talk about the single biggest hit to the economy, which is childcare. This is such a huge one. You're talking about it potentially being a $500 billion cost over a 9-month period if the effective child care needs that schools offer, both in school, after school activities and the like, aren't covered. My local paper is highlighting this front and center today, saying that people just are beside themselves. They don't know what to do. And Lisa, while there's not maybe a tradable angle on that, I certainly think about the fallout if a bunch of women, and in some cases men, all drop out of the labor force this year, basically in order to be caretakers.
That's right. About 1 in 5 workers in the U.S. rely on the school system in order to facilitate their own participation in the workforce. So for some families, that means one parent. Oftentimes it's the mother is looking at stepping back in order to be home, given the lack of childcare. But for a lot of families, it's not a choice. Sometimes, you know, there's single-parent families. And then there are other families I spoke to in doing this reporting who just can't afford for one parent to stay home. There's about 40% of the workforce that is currently working from home or able to, but that obviously means about 60% can't.